Hello, my dear viewers. This is Aunt Olga, and welcome to our program, Visiting the Inner World. I am Olga Demchuk, a researcher of the inner world of personality, and today, can you guess what we are going to talk about? About aggression. Today, I have come with a dragon whom I have named Dracarys. Do you remember in Game of Thrones when the main character would shout Dracarys to her dragon and they would burn everyone, the bad ones, with fire and flame? Today we will be talking about aggression, about rage, and about conflict. If a person does not recognize their own tendency toward conflict or aggression, it does not mean that they do not have it. It is there, but for some reason it is forbidden to them. They can't recognize it themselves. Let's think about this logically together. Here is our personality, and our personality would like an environment of unconditional acceptance. We would like other people to treat us the way we want, to respond to us in a certain way, and for the whole world to be an environment where everything works out for us, where we are lucky and the world responds to us. It responds positively, gives us everything we desire. And when the world does not want to be such an environment, we mistakenly perceive this as an attack on us. In other words, we often fail to recognize that the aggression originating within us is actually an internal impulse. Instead, we perceive this as a direct attack coming from the external world around us, feeling as though the environment itself is hostile toward us. Well, let's take the simplest example. You ran out of coffee at home and you didn't buy more. It feels as if the world is attacking us by not having coffee. Or you go to the store for a certain product and it's not there. Our desires are attacking us, but it seems to us that it's the store attacking us. Or the entire universe is attacking us by withholding what we want. And because of this, a person is mistakenly placed in the position of a victim. That is, they suffer from the absence of what they desire. And that's why their aggression goes unrecognized. And because of this, many problems arise. Let's look at 3 simple examples together. Let's imagine that there is a girl in front of you wearing a very short skirt. Or on the contrary, she's wearing a hijab. That's the kind of headscarf Muslim women wear, tied around the head. And if, in your worldview, short skirts are bad or wrong, or a hijab is bad or wrong, then this girl may be perceived as someone attacking your value system. That is, you feel aggression toward this girl. I do. I completely cross her out from my mind, and I consider her to be entirely in the wrong. But at the same time, I will begin to perceive the situation the other way around. She is attacking me with her item from her wardrobe. That is, I don't perceive the aggression rising within me. Instead, I see it as a defense against someone else's attack. It's like there are fighting cockerels, and these fighting cockerels jump at those who come onto their territory, at people, at intruders. And the fighting cockerel is completely convinced that he is protecting the hens or his territory. In other words, he sees himself as a defender, even though in reality he is already the one attacking. And so we don't recognize these attacks on the outside world as attacks. That is, we perceive them as a defense against someone else's attack, even though the aggression is ours. Let me give you another example. You are riding the subway and someone is speaking loudly on the phone. And you are tired, you've just finished work, you've had a lot of interactions, and you might perceive the other person's voice as being loud, as overly aggressive, almost as if this individual is intentionally attacking you with the sheer force of their voice. But in reality, it is your own aggression that wants to cancel out or eliminate what doesn't fit or what you don't like right now. A third example, a domestic one. This is when you live with someone and the person puts a mug somewhere other than where you think it should be placed. and then it feels as if the mug is attacking us. Although in reality it's aggression arising within me, and I am attacking this mug with my own aggression. Now let's try to unpack all of this. In other words, if you were truly honest with yourself, you would tell this girl, don't wear that, take it off because it doesn't fit with my worldview. Or you might say to someone in the subway, speak more quietly. Why are you shouting? So you see, if we let this out, we realize that we are being aggressive. But inside, when we hide it, it's as if we don't acknowledge this aggression within ourselves. Or for example, we might say about a mug, put the mug where it belongs. And this aggression that we generate ourselves, and then we hold it back. We tend to see this moment as self-sacrifice. I kept silent. So first I attack myself, I generate aggression. This is my aggression. And then while holding it back, I start to feel that the other person owes me something, and I see myself as a patient and kind for not having said anything. Let's turn the situation around. Let's imagine you arrive somewhere and a person, a friend or acquaintance, says to you, well, you really dressed up today. So naturally, when someone says this directly to us, we also perceive it as a form of aggression. Although, as we already know from our previous discussions, from previous examples, this person is processing reality in their own way. They are attacking their environment. In other words, the environment does not match their idea of how things should be, so they attack this environment that is not identical to themselves. Now, if I, the one who was told she really dressed up, am aware of all these aspects, if I have already acknowledged my own aggression, if I understand what triggers it, then my reaction to this will be different. It won't feel like an attack because I know that the person is first and foremost attacking themselves. But if I don't see it that way, I will perceive it as an attack and start to retaliate against that person. I would ask, what is this remark really about? This is exactly the kind of conflict we're talking about. In this way, a conflict arises between us. That is our aggression. Just because we hide it and have learned to restrain ourselves, we may not appear to be confrontational in real life, but inside we are constantly in conflict. Or let's imagine you're riding the subway, your phone rings, and someone tells you that you're flooding your neighbors. You say, wow, how am I flooding them? What's going on? And then someone sitting nearby says to you, why are you yelling across the whole subway? There are people here. If I'm not able to understand what's happening to me, then I also get drawn into this conflict. And as a result, it turns into a mess where nerves are frayed and energy is wasted. And then for a week or even a month, I keep having conversations with that person in my head. A similar situation happens when someone says something about a mug. That is, a conflict arises when not only do I personally perceive it as a direct attack, but I also instinctively start to attack that person in return as a defensive reaction. You know, there are people like that, really fierce, moralists. They just go and hit that girl in a short skirt with something. And some people really do that. Or they would hit a girl in a hijab just because she doesn't fit their idea of how someone should be. And we consider these kinds of aggressive, already antisocial people who lash out to be completely abnormal. We think they should be isolated, even though we stubbornly hide our own restrained outbursts from ourselves. And that's why we seem non-confrontational, even though the conflict is inside us. In other words, you see, this inner aggressiveness, many people don't recognize their own aggression or anger, and they don't understand where it comes from. They don't even realize why they react that way. But a person who has experienced aggression internally and is holding it back can come across as insincere. And this aggressiveness will still be perceived by others. People will feel a sense of caution towards such a person because we pick up on these things unconsciously without realizing it. So when we are faced with when a person is dealing with their own internal conflict and says something, the first thing we need to do is address our own aggressiveness. When we act like a fighting rooster attacking because we are convinced we are defending ourselves, and to enter into conflict. I'm not saying that you shouldn't defend your boundaries or respond, but when you enter into conflict and clarification, if you are aggressive, then it will definitely be unclear who the aggressor is. And then a person keeps trying to figure out in their mind, who was the aggressor? Was it me or was it them? Was it me or was it them? If someone hasn't brought their own aggression into their awareness, they constantly need to justify themselves and bombard themselves internally with arguments like, I was just defending myself, if they can't accept their aggression as their own. Not to project the cause outward. And in order to justify our own aggression, we need to create an equivalent level of demonization of the other person so that we can preserve our own sense of goodness. Because if I am a fighting rooster who is defending, then I am good and right. But if I am simply aggressive, then immediately bad and wrong. That's why we start to create a narrative in which we demonize the image of the one we directed our aggression toward, matching the extent of our own anger. To put it another way, we essentially transform this individual into a demon in our minds, which allows us to justify our own outward aggression by framing it as a necessary act of self-defense against a perceived threat. And in particular, sects and states, especially totalitarian ones, make use of this. They know that people have aggression in them regardless. And in order to channel this aggression, like directing it through pipes, a target is chosen. This is the scapegoat. I once recorded a video about this. The one we will hate, the one onto whom we will pour out our aggression so that either the leaders of the sect or the government remain spotless and innocent, while all the negativity is directed at a certain nation or a particular category of people. And this kind of harassment, when a certain group of people is singled out, is actually very beneficial. It works in someone's favor. For someone, it's profitable. And I hope you're smart enough to see these manipulations, to recognize them. Well, I think I'll wrap up this video now. Let me remind you that in August, our communication school will begin. There, we will discuss in more detail what to do, for example, when someone confronts you. And for those who may have recently joined my YouTube channel, I want to mention that there are also webinar recordings. So you can order a webinar about self-reflection. In this webinar, we'll explore what self-reflection is and how it differs from emotionalizing about yourself. You can also subscribe to the channel, like the video, and send in your questions, and I'll answer them. I'll say goodbye for now. Please share in the comments whether you recognize your own aggression and try to give examples of times when you acted aggressively or projected onto someone else. Let's learn from each other. See you next time.